Yep, so this is what, Teen Wolf Season 3B, Episode 5, or Episode 17 of the entirety of Season 3, or however you choose to look at it, of Teen Wolf, entitled Silverfinger. So, quick thing before I get into all of this, I've decided that it's kind of like how I originally did, like, my Walking Dead reviews and whatnot. There will be spoilers in this video, solely so that I can have a more wholesome conversation about the entirety of what happens in the episode. So this episode mostly deals with the fallout of the previous episode. We find out very early on that Chris Argent had had an encounter with these dark beings we later find out are called the Oni before, in which him, another person who had a Silverfinger, and possibly a couple other people were spared, and that they were hunting somebody who was a shapeshifter. They didn't go out and say he was a werewolf initially, but they said that they were after him. So throughout the entire episode, Chris, Allison, and Isaac are trying to meet up with this guy. So they try selling him an old flintlock pistol, and when that doesn't go through, because the guy that they're looking for doesn't do meetings personally, they send Isaac in, and he's all nervous, because he's got all the stuff he's got to remember. And then Allison kisses him and puts his hand on her butt, to use nice words, and he walks in all suave, but then he finds out that the person he's dealing with in there is also a werewolf, while Allison and her father break in. They talk to the guy, they get him to talk, and they talk about how the Oni, and how they're searching for the Kitsune, which the trickster spirit. But they're looking for a specific one called Void, which is a dark spirit. And they're out to, destroy it. And that's what their goal is. And that's, their journey throughout the entire episode. Everybody else, it starts off that, everybody, at least initially, thinks that the Oni are after Scott. So the twins are following him from the get-go, and it's later revealed that Derek's been following him all day, too. Scott doesn't want that, and, he eventually eludes them because he realizes that it might be Kira that they're after, because she's not normal. And so she goes, and they go to Scott's house, where the Deaton had helped make it better by building, replacing floorboards and basically replacing a lot of the lining of the house with mountain ash, so that nothing could get through. And while this was happening, I guess his dad finds out that Kira and Scott broke in, and, they get in an argument in the house, and his mom shows up, and then the Oni show up, and they stab his dad. I don't know what his first name is, at least off the top of my head. And basically, with the help of the twins and Derek, again, who've been following him, they force him outside, they cover it with mountain ash, and they, create the seal, but they break through. And then it turns out that what they've been doing with putting the 5 on the back of everybody's ears, the previous episode, had been, they're checking to see if they're what they're looking for, and if they are, then they get the symbol and they're fine. And we find out that Kira is a Kitsune, so everybody's worried that, oh, it's her, so they're going to take her. But it turns out it's not her. That she somehow, that she's a Kitsune, but she's not the one they're looking for. And that's a really interesting part of it. And then, lastly, the other main portion of this episode is Styles. With the previous episode, we found Styles was supposedly his handwriting that was on the board. So he was the one who ordered the kill, the one guy to try to kill Kira. And so But when he goes to show Scott, he doesn't have the key anymore, and the writing's going off the board. So he's questioning his mental state, and so he goes to the hospital, sees Melissa, and he gets checked in so that he can sleep because, you know, she determines, at least initially, that, oh, he can't sleep. And then there's a, you know, a cute moment there where he calls her mom, and that's the end. That was a nice, heartwarming moment. And then part of it was that we find out that his mom, you know, had been suffering from the same thing right around the time she died. It might even be the reason why she died. We don't know that yet, but that's just speculation. And then Styles wakes up and he's wandering around, and the Oni show up, and then it's kind of basically revealed that he's the Dark Spirit. And this is a big thing. You know, I kind of figured this, but I mean, there was a lot of interesting, weird things they threw into this episode. The things that they threw in with this episode, which I thought was really cool, was that, like, how at least it made the previous episode extra good. It was very misleading, you know. A lot of the speculation that I've heard around places with that was that you know, the Oni, they put the mark on the back of people's necks, and then they're the ones they become the Oni, and then they go and they kill somebody, and then it's like a never-ending cycle usually. But I like how they used that. They kind of misled everybody. And this episode, you know, that was a really cool part of the episode. Some of the better parts of the episode, I think, were definitely the Scott and Kira moments. We see very beginning of the episode that Scott shows Kira that he's a werewolf, and they kind of overcome that, and then there's another little cute moment closer to the midway point of the episode, right before his dad comes in, where they have another nice intimate moment. And those are some of the better parts of this episode. My only pet peeves with this episode is that there was no Lydia and no Peter. I'm interested in seeing what Peter's up to, because, again, on the forums, there was talks of Peter being Teen Wolf's endgame, which is when they eventually do end up stopping the series, which I know is going to happen eventually. I mean, I don't expect it for... I mean, there is a season 4, so I mean, I would assume that there would at least be a season 5 or a 6, hopefully at least 6 or 7 seasons, and that Peter, you know, if he's going to be the end game, and how they're gonna play that off. And so there's a lot of really cool things in there that I could see them doing with this. And then I watched Wolf Watch, and I saw previews for the next episode. It basically looks like, you know, figuring out what's wrong with Styles all next week. You know, him being this dark spirit, and you know, it's an interesting winding road, because I mean, in reality, I don't see them using Styles as the bad guy. You seeing that working out, I mean, or at least not that, seeing the Oni throughout the series as the main bad guys for causing a huge problem. I mean, I feel like there has to be something. There's usually at least two villains at least two villains or bad guys every time Teen Wolf comes around. Every season there's the main bad guy who is like kind of introduced in the beginning of the season or close to the beginning of the season. Then there's the main ones then that end up becoming the main ones. So I'm just interested in where the season goes. It could go a lot of places. And I think even more so than the last episode, this episode opened up a lot of possibilities. So I'm just waiting. So yeah, at this point I'm just rambling. So I mean, again, another great episode. Definitely check it out. Silverfinger. Next episode will air, next Monday, which is the 10th of February, which is also the day after Walking Dead comes back on. So I'm going to start doing those again. So yeah, so I'll see you guys later.